Alright guys, HyDra again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. A big roster confirmation last night with Atlanta FaZe officially confirming one of their players will at least be back for the new season. In fact, two of their guys will look to return. Cellium is gone, aBeZy is gone, but Drazah and Simp will still form the bedrock of that roster for next season. What does that mean for OpTic's CEO? Drazah took that out of his bio a few months ago after what happened at the World Championship and especially at the Esports World Cup as well. Does that mean that OpTic's future job on it is set to continue? Because under Drazah's reign at FaZe, things got rather good for OpTic over the last couple of seasons. Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I greatly appreciate it. Plenty to get into elsewhere. Last night was a Rangers night that OpTic did, and some pretty great shots of this actually. We do have the video footage as well of Shotzzy's first pitch, and we'll get into that. But yeah, they did the 1v1. I think they've done this a couple of times before. I know they were talking about where else could they do something like this. This is one of the interesting things, I guess, about having the city-based stuff that the teams have had over the last few years. Not to say that it's really been a positive for the scene, but there has been some benefit to it that, okay, OpTic based in Texas, they kind of partnerships and collaborations like this would probably be less feasible if it wasn't for the geolocation. So I don't know if that's necessarily going to stay forever, but I wouldn't be surprised if it does go. But I know that teams are, let's say, they have their opinions on whether keeping geolocation in the league, getting rid of the city-based stuff is a good idea. This is pretty funny. Claudia did a bit of practice work here with Shotzzy, and yeah, he goes for the pitch. This one didn't really get a plan. So then when he actually turned up there on the main stage, as it were, on the pitch, then Shotzzy needed to deliver. So here we go. This is the footage that we have from last night, and yeah, pretty cool to see actually. They introduce him, Anthony Cuevas Castro or whatever, and he steps up and he throws an absolute bomb that you know, would probably have got nuked about 600 feet into the stratosphere. But you know, it was good stuff to see anyway. There was another angle of it as well. Actually, this was what it looked like on the big screen there in the venue last night. Maybe a couple of you guys actually went along to this because I know that it was talked about for some time. So you know, not a bad pitch to be fair from Shotzzy given the short wind up. But you know, that was that update from last night on the OpTic side. And speaking of OpTic, we've got to talk about the CEO, as it were, so Drazah. Now, over the last few days, FaZe have done these announcements, a message from Cellium, a message from aBeZy, and both of those messages were goodbye, right? It's been a pleasure, and we're off. This one was probably going to go a different way, but they started it off the same way, a message from Drazah with the heart. I think this was pretty well done from a social media angle. He says, look, it's been my home for my family as well. Playing on stage in red felt incredible, and you know, we achieved so much in the last 2 years, as he says, but I want more, right? Like, we're coming back. We're going to do it again, and you know, I think it's pretty nice to see. So Drazah, he's back in the sense that his contract was over, right? So Simp and aBeZy, they were still under contract for the new season. Cell and Drazah's contract was over. So if they wanted them back, they needed to negotiate a new deal. Now, let's not forget, Drazah was linked with Kenny for some time to go to Toronto. That was a big rumour, right? There were rumours that JoeDeceives and bring in Ken and Drazah and, you know, CleanX and everything. And that could have been a potential setup for that team. That didn't happen, and I don't really know if that was ever close to happening or whether the reason why it didn't happen was because Kenny, we think, maybe got a better opportunity. We might see that confirmed in the coming days at Thieves. And therefore, Drazah's best option was presumably to stay at FaZe. But I'm sure that he had other discussions, other conversations elsewhere. I think Drazah's been an interesting player the last couple of years because I actually think that this team with Drazah with FaZe was so good at a time. And we saw that in their results on occasion. I think last year they were just unbelievably good at moments. But it didn't really work at the end of the year. And Drazah individually, his level it was pretty good given the caliber of teammates he's on for a large part of the season. But at the end of the year, a couple of events from Drazah weren't quite up to scratch, right? So there has been criticism his way because of that, and understandably, but he is one of the biggest grinders in the game. Nobody's going to take that away from him. And I actually think that he fits really well with FaZe. I don't want him to play for another org than FaZe because it's perfect, right? Drazah is probably still the biggest villain of the scene, I would say. You know, the FU Drazah chants and all that type of stuff. Yeah, Scrap has his, you know, people that don't agree with his perspectives on things, and, you know, Scrap and Drazah in their own way are kind of villains. I think also Kenny will step a bit back into that role now as well. I know that OpTic fans will always have a lot of love for him, but let's not forget that before Kenny joined OpTic, he was the OpTic Reaper on that Thieves team, and now he's is potentially going to be back on Thieves, so that's an exciting lineup. But I can't just feel that Drazah should be anywhere else than FaZe. It just makes too much sense. And they, of course, will intend this to be a continuation of a very strong partnership. So he says, look, we're back at it again, and we get some confirmation as well from Simp that, like, he's not going anywhere either. So, yeah, they officially confirm, welcome back Drazah. Drazah stays, and it's official that he's now re-signed with FaZe. So, could there have been better offers? I mean, you're looking at a team like, as I say, Thieves. There was talk that they were at least thinking about it, but the discussion between Drazah and Scrap is about whether they could resolve that issue, you know, Drazah in, Ghosty out type thing, was probably never going to happen realistically, and it's, yeah, feels like that's not going to change anytime soon. So Drazah, Scrap, they're not going to be making up, and I think that's frankly good for the scene in general, and Drazah staying on FaZe therefore probably makes the most sense. You know, if you were Drazah and you had the opportunity to go with Kenny to Toronto with JoeDeceives and CleanX, would you take that over staying on FaZe with Simp, 04 and Abuzah, which we think is what the team is going to be? That's an interesting question, I think. Now, if Kenny then goes to Thieves, and Drazah and Ken, they've had good success together in the past, Ben J gave his thoughts on why he didn't really think that duo returning was a good idea, but it would have been interesting if Drazah had still got the offer to say, okay, go to Toronto, play with Joe, play with CleanX, and then find one. That was an option possibly for him. We don't really know, but it's something that could have been contemplated anyway. CleanX, of course, is now going to be the flex with Real. I mean, let's say the team, instead of what we think is going to be JoeDeceives, Real, CleanX, and then, you know, who do they bring back? Insights, maybe Nastie. You know, they could have put Drazah in there instead. That's a pretty nice team. But if you're Drazah, the opportunity to keep playing with Simp is still pretty hard to turn down. And yeah, I just think it makes sense. Drazah being with FaZe just makes sense for a couple of different angles. Simp as well tweeted about it and says we're back. So, you know, making it clear beyond any sort of doubt that indeed Simp and Drazah will be a duo for the new season on that Atlanta FaZe team. We think with 04 and Abuzah around them. The other question becomes, what does this mean for the rivals? Because, well, Drazah has had a lot of success with FaZe over the last couple of seasons. The rosters with him on, of course with aBeZy and Cellium as well, came at a time where OpTic have done rather well the last couple of seasons, and this is all what's been pretty entertaining about this Drazah angle, is that having beaten OpTic a fair few times last season, and the record that Drazah has against OpTic is near enough impregnable, right? Like, he has been with FaZe crushing them individually, in a one-on-one level the last couple of seasons, but not always when it's mattered, and crucially, they've not even got the opportunity to really play OpTic at the big tournaments because they were bombing out too early. So under Drazah's tenure as CEO, OpTic have done rather well, right? And, as Breaking would say, looking forward to another year of the CEO delivering great returns to the shareholders of OpTic Incorporated. During the CEO's tenure, OpTic's ring count increased by 200%, putting Drazah in the top 1% of CEOs in the S&P 500. I thought that was, pretty good work. So should we expect this to continue, right? Are OpTic fans going to be happy about this change or not? Jake Hale says, I know the OpTic fans are nervous seeing Drazah re-sign with FaZe, because on some level, Drazah has had a great result against OpTic the last couple of seasons, but at the same time, with Drazah on FaZe, things have gone rather well for the OpTic fans. So, I do wonder, what a lot of the fans think about this, and just have a look at some of the replies here, saying, pretty much under FaZe Drazah's tenure, it's looking rather good for the OpTic fans. Like, oh no, we're scared about Drazah and FaZe, lining up together again next season, especially because the team on paper might not be as strong as it is this time around. As Brian Stat says, Drazah officially returned to FaZe for a third season in his first 2 years with the Red Brand. He won 4 championships, 7 finals, overall record of 79 in 25. So, the record does speak for itself, but over that period, 4 championships, and including the Esports World Cup, which was a big one for sure, but neither of the World Championships over the last couple of seasons. So this is how the teams we think are currently lining up, and it's pretty funny really to look at this from top to bottom and think, damn, what are these clowns doing? But OpTic, they're not going anywhere. Thieves, we think that this is probably going to be the team, but for now it's rumoured. FaZe, this is rumoured, but Drazah has now been confirmed since this graphic we put out last night. And then Toronto, as I say, it's going to be JoeDeceives, CleanX, and Real looking for for one. Not really sure who that's going to be. We're pretty sure what Falcons is going to be. Xnid, we think, has pretty much been confirmed as well. Gentlemates, who hopefully don't have the LAG logo anymore. It'd be nice if that disappeared entirely. That's going to be their quartet, we think. They've pretty much confirmed what Heretics are going to do. We know that Trakes is coming in. Rencor and Super aren't going anywhere. We think Metals is going to be there as the fourth. It'd be a surprise if he wasn't. Boston, we think, is going to be Snoop, Purge and Cammy looking for one. I think just quickly on this, right, there are conversations who that should be, because, like, I like the Purge Snoopy duo. I like Cammy as an AR, and yeah, if you look at that team, is it going to be necessarily a championship winner? Maybe not, but, you know, let's not forget they did come third at this year's World Championship, right? They did have a phenomenal run at that tournament. And Cammy and Wake, I mean, like, Snoopy was definitely improved last year. Still, I think some work to do, but Purge and Snoopy were a pretty damn good duo, and they were a little bit up and down, but mostly it's difficult to imagine Boston could have done much better than that, really. The ARs were at times on it, at times very much off the pace. If I had to keep one, I probably would keep Cammy. I also feel like from a cultural perspective, Cammy's just a bit more integrated there. They've got Coach Shawnee as well, who's Scottish. Cammy's Scottish. So, you know, it was always going to be this way. I think if they were going to change one of the ARs, it was probably going to be Wake, whether you think that's fair or not. I think it's probably fair. Who do they bring in? I think that's the question, right? If Boston are going for that trio plus one, who's the man? And I think Nastie's got to be a guy they look at. I mean, there's a couple of options, isn't there? One of which is probably former Minnesota players, like, let's say, Geo, right, from G2 last season. Could you bring in Geo there and just Geo for Big Wake? Maybe you think that's an upgrade? It could be, possibly could be. Nastie is, you know, I think an excellent player. So if I'm Boston and Nastie is available, I think you've got to get him, right? But I'd be a little bit surprised if he is available. I think that maybe Toronto should look at Nastie. I mean, you know, they could bring back Insight for sure. Maybe they will. And if, let's say, Toronto do get Nastie instead of Insight, then is that what Boston should think about doing? Possibly. So, but then again, you know, you're talking Black Ops 7, fast-paced game, maybe Insight isn't the best fit. You know, there's all sorts of questions, aren't there? So that's what we think Boston are up to. Then the Rocker, we think they're getting Kremp and then Estriel, with rumours that maybe Slasher or Skies could come along for the ride as well. And the other guys, yeah, they're just here for the party, right? So Cloud9, no idea. Raven's probably getting Souls. Surge, kind of no idea. Rumours about potentially signing the FeLo team, but no guarantees that's going to happen yet. So very much interested your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Definitely is going to be a strange one to see the trio play each other on different teams, all of them on different teams next season. And just one interesting thing to close out here with this. So TGU Swag put this out, the top 3 players of each era. So you can debate what the era should be, early years, MLG era, golden era, whatever you want to say, jetpack era. The logic here is you've got to have played every game to be included in the era. But I think you can look back at the early years and you could pick different names there, but you know, I think it's pretty nice to see. There's some honorable mentions in here as well. MLG era, Scump, JCap, Proofy, Merc, Big Timer. You know, there'll be some debate on this. I think that, to be honest, in the golden era, Black Ops 2 to Ghost, if you just want to consider those two games, Aches probably has to be more than an honourable mention, I think I would say. But and then we go to the Jetpack era, where, you know, Scump, Formal and Slasher I think is understandable. Crim and Octane, Kenny, Octane, Slasher, Dashy, TJ in the Boots revival phase. And then the Seed Yellers kind of felt like a bit of a different world than looking back at BO4 and earlier. So very much interested your thoughts on all of this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care. And I'll see you next time.
That's my AR duo with someone I don't. It's
Scrappy Cellium.
I don't.
Well, yo, what's Twitch saying, bro? Yo, chat. Before I see this interview, bro. Yo, listen, bro. Listen. Our team was not getting distracted, bro. Yo, bro was caked up and shit, but like, yo, you ain't fooling any of us, bro. I promise you. We came back. Yo, we came prepped, bro. Yo, bro thought he was getting away, checking them out, all caked up and shit. Nah.
Oh, look who it is, bro. Look who it is, man.